Coming up on Chasing the Natty, I'm back, baby, and we recap what is quite possibly the best college football weekend of all time. Maybe? We'll find out. In addition to that, we got plenty of waiver wire pickups for you guys this week. All and more coming up on Chasing the Natty.
Jones goes to the end zone. Oh, what a catch! Devontae Smith, touchdown, Alabama.
Watch out for Mr. Robinson. This kid is going to be special and is already flashing.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college football fantasy podcast.
All right, welcome in, everybody. This is Chasing the Natty, the college football fantasy podcast. My name is Jared Palmgren. I am back and ready to lead the charge into this recap of an awesome weekend of college football. For those of you who've been asking, I am feeling so much better from my oral surgery from this past weekend. My voice might sound a little bit off still. I'm still recovering a little bit, especially here on the right side. I had an impacted tooth on my right side. But in addition to everything, I'm doing fine, should be recovered. There were no complications whatsoever. Thank you for everybody again sending me any words of, not praise, what's the word I'm looking for? Affirmation, I guess, and just anybody saying that they were praying for me. I appreciate all of that. Thank you guys so much. On the other side of me is my co-host, as always, who deserves a massive round of applause for taking over both the Kings Classic discussion and the Week 6 preview for last week, Mr. Xavier Hood. Everybody, round of applause for him for taking over those shows. He did a fantastic job. I was there. I was behind the scenes doing the graphics and everything, but I could barely move my mouth as it was. So Xavier, again, took over for that. So Xavier, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. It's been a good weekend of football. It's been great. Glad that a majority of the sports are kind of colliding together. We're getting the baseball playoffs this week and this past week. Basketball season's coming back. College football is finally in full swing, and the NFL looks like it's getting more interesting week by week. So it's good for all the sports fans out there.
Oh yeah, no joke. Again, we did our fantasy basketball draft last night and everything. You roped me into that one, so we're gonna see how that goes. But it surprised me. I'm like, oh, that's right. Basketball is just like right around the corner, and like the baseball season's in the playoffs now. Braves, I believe, are 1-1 against Milwaukee, so we're still doing pretty well. Go Braves, chop on, all that good jazz. And then hockey should be getting started relatively soon here, if I remember correctly, as well. So yeah, again, lots and lots of sports going on. But like we always say at the end of the day, this is a college football fantasy podcast, so we got a lot to discuss for you guys today. Just overall thoughts of the weekend, y'all. This might have been the greatest college football weekend we've ever seen. So many just great close games. Almost every time slot had at least 2 or 3 games coming down to the wire at the very end. I was just blown away yesterday. I was exhausted just by the end of the night. David, what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah, it definitely was an interesting weekend. I feel like we always say this every year. There's always an interesting week where things get down to the wire, and then people make exaggerations about this being the best. But this is definitely up there for a lot of stands. Mm-hmm. We saw a lot of excitement. We saw a lot of teams drop out of the top 10. A lot of teams drop out of the top 5. Just so much movement around. And then I want to shout out to Cincinnati. You made it to the top 4. Luckily, I've been supporting you for the past 2 seasons, and hoping that y'all would get the respect y'all deserve. I'm still waiting on the Michigan State respect as well too, but slowly but surely. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's been a great place in college football. I will say this as a sidebar. I'm probably like one of the few people that are against expansion for these type of reasons, to where I think every season is just magical enough to where we'll get parity. Like there's a coming of a time where you'll see the norm not be the norm anymore, and you'll get enough parity to where things will feel much more balanced. I don't want to see an 18 playoffs where teams are just, squeaking by because they won in their dumpster fire of a conference, and then they face a real team and they get blown out. So I like the 4 teams that we have now, but going forward, I can't wait to see what happens probably like around week 10 or 11.
Yeah, no, there's just so much ball to play left. Like I was thinking about this, and it was really the Big Ten East is the division that keeps catching my eye. It's like you got Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, 4 borderline top 15, top 10 programs all in that one division, and none of them have played each other.
Yeah,
they got to play each other at one point. And those are going to be massive games when they come down the line. There is so much ball to play left. Again, hyperbole speaking here and everything, but like this might be one of the best seasons of college football in a decade. It has been incredible so far, and we're not even halfway through it. That's just a crazy thing to me. Anyway, that was kind of a long intro, but we got a lot to get to. So first, we're going to hit up some of our waiver wire pickups for you guys this week, for those of you looking for some options in fantasy for this week, and then we will get to our game recap. So first things first, we are going to hit our waiver wire QBs. So we got 5 of them on the board for you guys this week. And so the first one we're going to talk about here is Mr. KJ Jefferson out of Arkansas, owned on 25% of rosters. The big thing here is once he's not playing a defense named Georgia, suddenly KJ Jefferson is a true dual threat quarterback that is going to be able to score on the ground and through the air for Arkansas. And Arkansas is a great team. They got a good running game. They got a lot of good pass catching options. Warren Thompson kind of broke out in this game a little bit. Traylon Burks reminded us all of who he is. And then KJ Jefferson, really the star of the show for this Arkansas offense here. He scored 3 touchdowns through the air and then 3 on the ground. So he had a massive game. I believe he was the QB1 for this past week. Scored over 50 points. So Xavier, you got any thoughts on Mr. KJ Jefferson going forward?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people had a lot of high expectations for him coming into this year, a lot of question marks around his ability to throw the ball. And, there still can be question marks around it, but I think the volume that he gets with his legs and the amount of passes that he can throw with the talented receiver that he has in Traylon Burks just bodes well for him. And especially like Arkansas's schedule, I mean, I think they've not gotten through the hardest part of going through Alabama, which I don't think, we'll talk about Alabama a little bit later and hear our thoughts. But I mean, besides Alabama, they got through their tough, really, really tough parts of the schedule. You've already beaten Texas. You lost to Georgia. You lost to Ole Miss, but you lost to Ole Miss in a blazing glory fashion where, a lot of people may, have question marks about Sam Pittman going for 2. But I think that was just a big cultural move right there to where like, hey, I don't want to lose this game. I don't want to go into overtime or anything like that. I want to see if my quarterback can make the play. And sadly, he didn't, but it just bodes well for Arkansas as a whole as a program. I think KJ Jefferson going forward, this is a big, even though it's on a loss, I think it's a big confidence booster where he was able to show his full range of abilities. So definitely think he should be up over 40% after this week.
Oh yeah, I definitely have a lot of thoughts on that Ole Miss Arkansas game. We'll get to that recap later in the show, but yeah, like I said, I'm pushing big for KJ Jefferson this week, and honestly, even against Bama, we saw Calzada kind of carve up Bama's defense this past weekend. I imagine Bama's going to get better because they're Bama. But even still, KJ Jefferson has half the performance that he had from this past week. That's still a very serviceable fantasy quarterback for you week in and week out. Next quarterback I have listed here is, once again, Jerry Bohannon out of Baylor. A lot of people kind of jumped off ship with him last week after he had a 14-point performance against Oklahoma State. Well, he came right back against West Virginia and scored over 30 points again. Again, true dual-threat quarterback. These are must-haves in your fantasy lineup. You need quarterbacks that are going to be able to take off on the ground. Jerry Bohannon is one of those guys, so absolutely pick him up. And I believe he's got a couple pretty good matchups coming up for him. So, Xavier, what are your thoughts on Jerry Bohannon?
You know what? Yeah, I think he does as well, too. I mean, BYU is their next game. That's going to be a little tougher game for him. We'll see how they look. They didn't look that impressive against Boise State this past weekend, which I think I picked Boise in the upset for that game.
I believe you did.
But if not, okay, I did. Cool. But I think BYU is going to bounce back. You have your quarterback probably going to have another week to rest up and get healthy. With Jerry Bohannon, It's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie. He's going to have some big games to come up. You have against Texas, which they've shown that defense is just a non-existent after the first quarter. So maybe he'll be able to put up points. Then you have games like TCU, Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Texas Tech as your last game. So they could bode well for him. I didn't like the rushing ability from this past game. I think he only had like 6 carries for 6 yards, but he did get a touchdown on the goal line. So I think that worked out for him. So, yeah, I think Jerry Bohannon is a good shout to take, but I think they're, for a lot of these other quarterbacks, I'd probably take over him for now.
No, absolutely fair enough. This next quarterback, I know for a fact you want to take, and you were getting on to me about believing in the Tennessee Hypo offense earlier this offseason. Now you're all on board with Mr. Hendon Hooker, who we have as our next quarterback here on our waiver wire pickups. Hendon Hooker, quarterback out of Tennessee, owned on 25% of rosters. By the way, going up against Ole Miss this week, we absolutely destroyed South Carolina this past week. The week before, he led the charge against Mizzou, absolutely destroyed them. If he goes up against any defenses that have any weaknesses whatsoever, this offense is going to be putting up points on them. Now, I don't expect them to be putting up these kind of points on Bama. I don't expect these kind of points being put up on Georgia later in the season. But even still, like, you get a great matchup with Hendon Hooker. I see no reason why not to put him in. So, Xavier, what are your thoughts on Hooker?
Yeah, like you said, I've been, probably the biggest hater on the Tennessee offense for the longest, where I just didn't think that they would be able to come out this explosive. And they've proven me wrong, but it's just all been dependent on the matchups, to where I'm a believer for the matchups of how when they play. Like this past weekend against South Carolina, I had a good feeling that Hendon Hooker was going to have a good game, but I had to see it. I was like, can you consistently beat up on bad defenses? So this was a good statement win for him for, fantasy perspective. But Ole Miss, I think, will be a bigger test. It's more going to be like, can you have a better shootout than Ole Miss and their team? Can you come?
I have no clue whether or not they'll win against Ole Miss and everything, but I have no doubt that Hooker's going to be putting up some points in that game.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say. I mean, Arkansas is a good team. Tennessee is still questionable about how legit, good they are. I mean, they beat up on Missouri and South Carolina. That's like the bottom feeders of the East, and then. I don't think they've played Vandy just yet, but
no, Tennessee plays Vandy at the end of the year.
Yeah, so that's going to be a good game for Hendon Hooker to play. But I think Ole Miss will be a better test, because I'm not going to say that Ole Miss's defense is just completely non-existent, but yeah, that Arkansas game did show that there is holes. But is Tennessee good enough, and is Hendon Hooker good enough to expose those holes? So I still would take him, pick him up off the waiver wire, because there's a lot of good matchups that I do like later on in the year. But for now, maybe not that Ole Miss game. That's just me personally.
Oh, I'd start him against Ole Miss in a heartbeat. Next quarterback we have here on the waiver wire for this week. This is the one I'm probably the most hesitant recommending for this week, and that's Frank Harris, quarterback out of UTSA. And that's mostly to do with the fact that this guy is so boomer bust every single week. This past week, I believe he might actually... I might have lied earlier when I said KJ Jefferson was the QB1, because I think it might have also have been Frank Harris. Frank Harris had himself a game against Western Kentucky.
4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown.
So he went off in that game, and that's the upside you can get with Frank Harris. Like that, and he showed that last year. The only problem is you can easily get a game under 10 points with him. I struggle to start him in my group of 5 league every week, because I know for a fact that it's he can get me well over 25 points in a game, or it could be 8 points, and it doesn't even look like it's dependent on the matchup. It's just very hesitant. But even still, if you're just looking for a guy that can even have a possibility of getting you those high scoring games, Frank Harris is absolutely worth picking up here. So what are your thoughts on Frank Harris, Xavier?
Yeah, I think he's another one of those quarterbacks that's dependent on the matchup. I think it's not even boomer bust. I think it's just you have to look at the matchups. They play Rice next week, which I don't believe has a good rushing defense. So I'm expecting Syracuse McCormick to absolutely run all over them, and Frank Harris to take it easy this game. Maybe throw 1 or 2 touchdowns at the most. I think in those shootout type of games, upcoming, he has probably LA Tech and a few other games where it might be close.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in those high volume games where they're going to have to go back and forth, then you're going to see the best of Frank Harris. But it's going to, if they rely on Syracuse McCormick and he can win them the games, then there's no need for Frank Harris to go out there and put up that many points.
Yeah, like I said, it to me it's a risk with Frank Harris, but again, it's one of those things you can't ignore what he did this past week. So it's one of those things where if you're desperate and none of these other guys are on the waiver wire for some reason, Frank Harris, pick him up. Yeah. Last quarterback we have here is Mr. Casey Thompson out of Texas, owned on 30% of rosters. Dude put on a show for the Red River Shootout this past week and still lost the game, unfortunately. That's really kind of one of the more heartbreaking things from this past weekend. Dude threw for about 5 touchdowns, a little under 400 yards, if I remember correctly. Him and Xavier Worthy, who we'll get to here in a second, when those two are hooking up, that is a deadly, deadly duo that you can have on your fantasy teams. And starting quarterback for Texas, Syracuse offense, I see no reason why you can't just pick him up. 30% of rosters is way too low for a guy like that. What do you think, Xavier?
Yeah, we say that now. I think Casey Thompson plays up to his competition, but also sometimes plays down. I think this is more personally to me a boomer bust guy, because I've seen the Casey Thompson lows of lows, and I've seen him at the highs of highs, which I think we've seen like maybe twice so far this season. Mm-hmm. And also you're losing Jordan Whittington for probably, I don't know how long, with the shoulder injury or his arm injury. I forgot what it was, but you're losing another top guy. I do love the connection with him and Xavier Worthy if you have that stack at all. But I guess coming up on their schedule, you have Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State. Not saying that they'll lose those games or Casey Thompson won't go off, but I'm not gonna just put my full faith and say, "Hey, Texas." All right, let me choose my words wisely. Texas's offense is back. I won't say it. I won't say that. I would like to see a little bit more consistency out of him, because I think last week he had a little dud performance against TCU to where I wasn't happy with the performance he had.
No, and then again, I totally get that. And again, I look like when deciding these things, I looked at his TCU game and I'm like, Xavier's going to bring that up. And you're right. Again, but I think for almost any one of these guys that we have listed here, like if you're looking for a guy that's going to get you 30 points every single week guaranteed, they're already off the waiver wire. We're too far into the season for that. You're looking for guys at this point who are good matchup opportunities. And I think Casey Thompson and a Syracuse offense, again, against the right matchup, can absolutely be a perfect option for you going forward, especially as we get into these bye weeks. Good God, the amount of leagues I'm struggling with the amount of people on bye weeks every single week. These like weeks 6, 7, and 8 are brutal when it comes to bye weeks. But that's neither here nor there. We'll go ahead and move on. And Xavier, I'll let you kind of discuss the running backs we have for this week.
Yeah, I guess we can first start off with Brad Roberts of Air Force, owned on 38% of rosters. Brad Roberts has been an interesting name in its military schools, but he's been showing that he's been the most consistent running back for that program. And if I'm not mistaken, he does it almost like all, to where he gets the majority of the carries. Sometimes he gets receiving work. I see no reason why not to, but I think it also is dependent on matchups. It's going to be it's not going to be tough going forward. It just depends on what Air Force's schedule looks like. I mean,
they're about to get into conference play, which the Mountain West is not exactly known for its extremely good defenses. Yeah. And they've already been in multiple shootouts this year already. So it's weird to say shootout for a triple option team, but that's what Air Force does. They break off for long plays lots of times.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's leading the team in attempts by 70. Like, it's 150, and then the quarterback is next at 80.
So he's got the volume. So Brad Roberts is a great volume guy.
So yeah, I guess we can move on to our next guy, Hassan Haskins out of Michigan, owned on 32%. I know it's tough to where a lot of people early on, I think it was like week 3 or 4, where people were rushing to get Blake Corum, and now it seems like Hassan Haskins is the next guy from that Michigan running back room. It was good at the time back then to also take a flyer on Hassan Haskins, because he gets those goal line carry and that work. And it's always back and forth between those two. Like, at the beginning of the year, it started out with Corum being the more reliable back. Now it looks like Haskins is that more reliable back. So Michigan has a good problem with their running back room. They have 2 good backs, and depending on the game, either one of them can go off. And right now, I think Hassan Haskins has the hot hand in terms of scoring touchdowns. So, yeah, absolutely. Michigan, they're about to get into the Big East, like you mentioned earlier. So it's going to be a little bit tougher with those games to see how he will perform. I mean, I think they've gotten past, some good tests of Rutgers and Nebraska facing the defense they have up there. But once you go against the Penn States, the Michigan States, so let's see what Ohio State can do against the run game, if they're getting any better or not. But yeah, absolutely. Hassan Haskins should be definitely named off the waiver wire next week. That it should be above 40%.
Yeah, the thing that struck me this past week is that he had more carries than Corum. That I'm used to Haskins being a high number 2, but a clear number 2 in that offense. But I saw he got several more carries than Corum this past week, and I'm like, that's actually an interesting development. If Haskins really is kind of taking over that backfield as number 1, that's going to be huge because a lot of people own Corum, but not a ton of people own Haskins. Yeah. So I'd say absolutely go out and get him. You want to move on to our next guy?
Yes, Mr. Sir Roderick Thompson. Texas Tech owned on 24% of rosters. He's made a resurrection in his college fantasy football career, where Taj Brooks, he was leading off the year doing really well, then he got injured. So Sir Roderick Thompson had to come back. Another injury-prone player that a lot of people kind of avoided this year, but he's been looking good so far in the past few games that he's played in terms of the volume he's getting and also the touchdowns he's getting. Mm-hmm. And Texas Tech is not winning these games, but he's in it for majority all 4 quarters, and he's still scoring at a high rate. So I think Sir Roderick Thompson is a good player to pick up, especially with the Big 12 being defensively challenged now. They have Kansas, so that's a good matchup for the next game. Then they have Kansas State, maybe a little bit tougher. Then after that, you get into some questionable games. But I think Texas Tech always hangs around there late in those games to where we'll still put up points, but we'll still lose the game.
Yeah, no, if Texas Tech could ever not have their lead back injured, that would be great. Because when they have one running back, we saw this earlier this year with Taj Brooks, now Sir Roderick Thompson. When they have one back, it's great. They that is a mouth that they will feed constantly. But the problem is these guys can't stay healthy. Sir Roderick Thompson included. That's why I think it's a little bit of a risk picking him up off the waiver wire. But again, it's one of those things where if he stays healthy, it's going to be massive for you every single week. Probably almost a guaranteed 15, 20 points every single week from him. But again, you also run the risk of him cracking like glass and every single time he touches the ball. So we'll see. I'm not one to point out oh, this guy's injury prone, don't take him. That's why I have him on this list. If I was that way, I wouldn't even have Thompson on this list. But even still, I do think it is worth mentioning that it's just this guy has had a lot of problems in the past. So if that is something that worries you, pick somebody else off of this waiver wire list. Speaking of which, Xavier, you want to move on to our next guy?
Yeah, at number 4, we have Marquez Cooper out of Kent State, owned on 15% of rosters. I'm surprised this name hasn't been up. I mean, I understand that it's been, Kent State's had their hard part of the schedule, and you haven't get to see the flashes of Marquez Cooper for a while, but this dude is a legit back for that Kent State offense. I mean, the only worry I have is with Dustin Crum, because he's so mobile in a lot of MAC action to where he can steal some touchdowns away from him. But Marquez is getting a lot of work. I think in his past 3 games, he's averaging around maybe 14 to 15 carries, if I'm not mistaken. And now that they're going deep into their MAC schedule, then I'm expecting a lot more as well, too. Yeah, in his past 2 games, he's had 31 and 21. And in the third game, he had 13. So that's probably even way more than I calculated in my head. So I think Marquez Cooper is a good player to go out there and get, especially for the volume that he's going to get and the touchdown opportunities that he's going to create.
Yeah, whenever you have one of these offenses, especially an offense like Kent State, where they're about to get into MAC play, they're about to start putting some points up on people, you want to get every piece of that offense that you can, because they're about to be scoring a ton. Scoring opportunities for them are about to go through the roof. And Marquez Cooper, to me, is the perfect piece off of this Kent State offense to go ahead and grab. We'll get to another guy here in a second when we get to wide receivers. But Marquez Cooper is perfect to grab off the waiver wire right now, because, again, he is that lead back for that offense. He is going to be that guy that's good. Now, again, when you get to goal line, it's going to be a 50-50 shot between him getting the goal line carry or Dustin Crum getting the goal line carry. But even still, that, to me, there's going to be plenty of touchdowns to where that's still probably a good 1, maybe 2 touchdowns per game for Marquez Cooper at the end of the day, especially when they're playing against some of the worst defenses in their conference. So I think Marquez Cooper is absolutely worth a pickup here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess we can move on to our last guy. We have Snoop Connor out of Ole Miss, owned on 10% of rosters. Yeah, I'll say this about Snoop. He was in a very tough situation in terms of the backfield, but I think Lane Kiffin has realized that he has a very talented backfield with Parrish, Ely, and Snoop.
Mm-hmm.
And with Ely, I guess, presumably out, you've kind of gotten a guy where he's filling in that number 2, or else maybe if you want to move it up even higher, where him and Parrish are 1A and 1B for that running back room at Ole Miss. So I think that bodes well. Snoop Connor is a very hard runner. Also, it's same with Parrish. And this past weekend against Arkansas, they had 2 guys with over 100 yards, and Matt Corral was their 3rd guy with 94 yards. So you had 3 guys running for almost 100 yards. So I think there's going to be a lot of room for that offense to run the football, and Snoop Connor's going to be a big part of that. Probably like a more of a if I had to look at this past weekend, it was a pretty even split between the 3 of the guys running the football, to where they ran about 49, and it looks about a good 33% from 3 of them, and then you get a few little sprinkled in that got a few 1-yard rushes. But yeah, Snoop is going to be a big part of this offense. If you don't have I'm presuming that Parrish is probably over 40%. Yeah, you should go out there and get Snoop as well too.
I believe Parrish is also under 30%. So I'm recommending both of them here. But I specifically put Snoop Connor mostly because he is the one getting those red zone carries, those all important carries that Now, Snoop Connor is able to break off for a 50-yard run. He did it this past week. Don't get me wrong. But even still, he's the one that once they get close to that goal line, he's the one, at least while Ely's out of the question at the moment, he's the one that they're trusting with those carries. So I think that's massively valuable in this offense that's really putting up points on pretty much everybody in the country except for Alabama. So I think they'll put up points on pretty much everybody else the rest of the way. They put up 52 on Arkansas this past week. We'll talk that game later, but Snoop Connor absolutely worth picking up here. All right, let's move on to our waiver wire wide receivers. I feel like that's a tongue twister if you really want it to be. Waiver wire wide receivers. Waiver wire wide receivers. I'm losing my mind. It's okay. We got 5 here, and I legit had a hard time narrowing down this list. So on our show notes, I'll have 1 or 2 guys here afterwards that I'll mention as an honorable mention, because there's a lot of guys to me that you have to pick up this week. The waiver wire wide receivers are deep this week, and it starts nowhere else except for Mr. Xavier Worthy out of Texas. Monster game this past week. Dude went 9 receptions, 261 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. I can't, nothing else to say but get your rainbows out, because this was one heck of a coming out party for Xavier Worthy. We already knew that he was kind of building his way up in that wide receiver room, building repertoire with Casey Thompson. Man, they showed it this past weekend. A lot of people jumped ship. Last week, I was getting texts from people being like, oh, should I drop Worthy? He only had 1 catch this past week. He dropped several balls. I'm like, y'all, calm down. He's going to be just fine. And he was. And he might be one of the best wide receivers moving forward over the next couple of years in college football. This dude is about to be insane. Grab him now before everybody else does. I would not be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps over 70% ownership this week. I think it's that big of a jump.
Yeah, I think definitely with the Jordan Whittington news of him being hurt and seeing how long he's going to be out. But I just only wary of Casey Thompson being boom or bust. I think, your quarterback and wide receivers are always dependent on each other. And I mean, the first play of the game, Xavier Worthy got a little short catch and then ran it for 75 yards against Oklahoma. And I think it was just a great showing of his skill set of breakaway speed, able to, be in multiple places on that wide receiver tree and ran different routes, things like that. So I do like the upside of Xavier Worthy. I just, the only hesitation I have is all right, is Casey Thompson going to have a good week with him to get him the ball and make sure he's not doing any dumb boneheaded overthrows. So, but his volume definitely should go up.
Fair enough. 9 receptions this past week, and that doesn't even include the targets that just either missed him or he just didn't get his hands on. Dude has the volume to be a number 1 receiver for your team going forward. Xavier, I'm actually going to ask you a question a little bit later on when we talk about. Actually, I'll ask you it now, because this is more of a Devi / C2C question. But say you're in a C2C league, You have the number one pick. Which three do you, or I give you three options. Who do you go with the number one pick? Do you go Xavier Worthy, Bijan Robinson, or Travion Henderson? Who do you go with?
Ooh, C2C. I still think I go Bijan Robinson.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah,
I was just curious.
Yeah, I think in terms of what Bijan, his skill set has shown over these past 2 seasons at Texas, and then the first season at Texas and this season now, and then what that could translate to the NFL, it just screams that this man is going to be a great back for the NFL. Travion Henderson has had a great coming out party in terms of a true freshman campaign. A lot of freshmen this year have had great coming out parties as well.
Oh, yeah.
So we're seeing a lot, but I think Bijan is just he was rated number one running back for a reason. Same with Travion. Xavier has done really well. He was, I think, a 5-star decommitted from Michigan. But, I like my running backs a little bit more.
No,
especially a running back that can catch out of the backfield or be put in the slot. So,
speaking of running backs real quick, I forgot to mention this. Honorable mention for waiver wire running backs this week. Raheem Rocket Sanders. We'll talk about him later, but I would absolutely say that he is somebody you should absolutely be keeping your eye on. Move on to our next wide receiver here off the list, and that is Mr. Tyrese Chambers out of Florida International University, owned on 31% of rosters. We get like one or two of these guys every year. Just a group of 5 wide receiver that comes out of just nowhere. Like, I never heard of Tyrese Chambers before this season. And suddenly he is just lighting up the world on fire. Last 3 games, 26.5 points, 14.9, 33.6 this past weekend. Just a big, tall wide receiver that is just able to get over these smaller DBs in these smaller conferences, take advantage of those situations. I think Tyrese Chambers has proven that he's going to be getting the volume every single week for these past 3 weeks and going forward. His lowest game's been 8.1 points. He only had 2 receptions in that game. Absolute deep threat for this Panthers offense. Go grab Tyrese Chambers. Xavier, you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think FIU has a good problem where Tyrese Chambers looks like that number one wide receiver. I think going forward he'll get even more targets because at first it was Bryce Singleton. Bryce Singleton is still leading the team in receptions. He's just not getting the touchdown. Tyrese Chambers is. He has 6, and then all the other receivers have 1. So I think it's definitely a good shout to where you have a great balance of running backs with Devontae Price, and then you have wide receivers with Tyrese and Bryce Singleton. And I guess going forward, it's just going to be Tyrese. And like you said, we always get that one just group of 5 team with a group of 5 player just exploding onto the scene. So I can't wait to see what he looks like going forward, especially with the rest of their schedule looking like it's going to remain in conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CUSA conference. Gotta love that.
Yeah.
Next wide receiver we have on the board here. This is one that I'll be honest, I'm shocked at the 8%. A.T. Perry, wide receiver out of Wake Forest. I know a lot of people are sick and tired of just going back and forth on these wide receivers with Wake Forest, not sure who's going to show up every single week. A.T. Perry has shown that he has the upside in this offense every single week. And again, Wake Forest has been in a shootout for the last 3 weeks. So if you think that they're going to have a high over/under game, they're more than likely going to be putting up points in that game. A.T. Perry is a great option to be picking up and trying to get in a piece of this offense. He's able to get, I believe, 2 touchdowns from this past week.
3.
Off to 3. I was lowballing him. My God. So slightly touchdown dependent there. I believe Ja'Kerry Roberson had about the same yardage as him. But even still, again, when you have these guys that are the red zone targets and everything like that, pick them up, especially for this Wake Forest offense that clearly is going to be putting up points pretty much against anybody in their conference, it looks like. So what do you think, Xavier?
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's tough dealing with these Wake Forest wide receivers. A lot of people going into the season like Ja'Kerry Roberson, he's still not doing bad. He's just not getting touchdowns. And, it's just a back and forth between A.T. Perry, Ja'Kerry, and then I'm forgetting the other receiver.
Taylor Morin.
Excuse me?
Taylor Morin.
Yeah, Taylor Morin. So it's really tough, but A.T. Perry has been that reliable touchdown receiver to where I think almost every game except for one, he's gotten a touchdown. So it's a safe floor, and it's a really, really high ceiling with the upside of what Wake Forest is doing with their offense and having these shootouts. So I'm not surprised it's not over 40%, but I am surprised it's so low at 8%.
Yeah, again, that's what caught my eye. I was like, 8%, really? Next wide receiver we have on the board here. I've been impressed with the Western Kentucky offense this entire year. That passing volume is insane, and it's easily good enough for not only Jared Stearns, who's probably might end up as the wide receiver 1 by the end of the year, with just the amount of consistency that he gets. But we got another wide receiver here off the Western Kentucky offense that really caught my eye with just how consistent he's been week to week, and that's Mitchell Tinsley, Western Kentucky wide receiver, owned on 13% of rosters. Here's the last 5 weeks for him: 14.3, 17.8, 8.8, 18.2, 18.7. That's consistent as hell. Again, only one game under 10 points and 0 games above 20. If you just know that that's the amount that you're going to get every single week, and you got a lot of guys on a bye, absolutely pick this man up and know that you're going to get a consistent guy every single week. So what do you think, Xavier?
Yeah, with that Western Kentucky offense, honestly, it's for wide receiver 2, it's between Tinsley and Corley. I love both guys, but I think Tinsley is just doing better in recent weeks. So I do like the upside of Tinsley going forward, to where I don't think he's going to push Jared Stearns, anytime soon, at wide receiver 1. But you've had 2 back-to-back 100-yard games. I don't think Corley has done that at all this season, but they're getting a lot of volume where everybody in this offense, if you're wide receiver 1 through 3, you're getting about around 5+ targets a game and receptions. Mm-hmm. So I think, if you get Tinsley, if you have Stearns or Corley, then you're kind of set. But Tinsley probably right now has the hot hand, and I expect him to, move up. Maybe it'll take a few like this past week, not this past week, this upcoming week and next week for him to get over 40. But I definitely see his percentages going up in terms of ownership.
Absolutely. We'll move on to our final guy here, and this is, again, I got a couple other guys I just want to mention real quickly after this guy, but Dante Cephas, can say what a coming out party for him this past week. I need to pull up his stats real quick, actually. Dude went absolutely off this past weekend. 13 receptions, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Penn State. We were all wondering who was going to step up for Dustin Crum as the wide receiver 1. A lot of people thought Deshaun Polk. I was kind of leaning maybe a little bit more towards Nakeem Johnson. I thought I was seeing some repertoire being born there. Out of nowhere comes Dante Cephas. Now, he definitely has his lower weeks. He only had 9 points against Bowling Green. That's definitely not what you want to see. But the week before against Maryland, he had 26.1 points. And then obviously the weeks before that, he was facing against Iowa, Texas A&M, just good defenses. Just like Dustin Crum, nobody expected him to do much there. But again, going deep into this MAC conference, these Kent State players are going to be putting up some points going forward. So Xavier, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, like you said, for all those reasons, I would pick up Dante Cephas as well, too. I still have, I still like Nakeem Johnson as well. I think he's I think he's the second leading receiver for that offense in terms of receptions. So I think, Crum is finding, his wide receiver 1 and 2. It's kind of filling out nicely. And then now that they get into the MAC play, we're about to see a lot of guys be a little bit more relevant than we've seen before. Because, there was always the knock of, like, for the people that drafted Crum, it was like, all right, those first 4 or 5 games are going to be rough. But then after that, everything should look pretty nice.
And he's looking great so far. He had 40+ points this past weekend. God, I loved it. One of my best ball leagues is like entirely based off of the fact that I drafted Dustin Crum in the first round. And let's just say I jumped up a few spots after this last week. It helped out a lot. All right, and like I said, I have a few other wide receivers I do feel like just are worth mentioning here because, again, deep waiver wire class for wide receivers this week. Corey Sutton, still under 40%. Why is that, y'all? I know he didn't play this past weekend, so I guess a lot of people weren't looking for grabbing a guy off a bye week, but still, 36% needs to be a lot higher than that. And then the other one that's really kind of jumped out to me is Demario Douglas, wide receiver out of Liberty. This is a guy that I thought, or at least at the beginning of the year, I didn't think that we would be seeing any other Liberty players really jumping out at us as fantasy options. But Demario Douglas has become a clear wide receiver 1 for Liberty and for, why am I blanking on his name? Malik Willis going forward. So I think he's absolutely worth a pickup, especially if you're trying to counter Malik Willis just a little bit. So Xavier, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Corey Sutton, the bye week, I understand why maybe his percentages didn't go up because you don't want to just pick up somebody off of a bye week and you're not going to play him if you're struggling. But With Demario Douglas, that was a name I saw as well in our league, and I was like, I did, like you said, I was under the impression that maybe Liberty didn't have like the number one wide receiver. Malik Willis will use a lot of his legs, and you'll see his arm sometimes, but he's been a consistent target for him, and I love that going forward, especially with Liberty getting back into their conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, absolutely. So those are our wide receivers for the week. Let's move on to our tight ends for the week. We'll go through these a little bit quicker because 3 out of the 5 are basically the same guys that I've been, 4 out of the 5 really have been the same guys I've been recommending for a long time. Jelani Woods back from injury. Hopefully he gets back going with that Virginia offense going forward. Massive target for them. He had 8 points from this past weekend. Looks like they're slow rolling him back into it. But I believe, who does Virginia play this weekend? I believe they play Duke?
Good question.
But
they play Duke.
Yeah, they play Duke. So expect him, especially if he stays not injured this week in practice, for him to be back out there. Lucas Kroll, one of my mans for this year, somehow went down in percentages. Shame on y'all. He's only on 34% of rosters. He's back this week with Kenny Pickett in that offense. So absolutely expect them to put up some points. Tyreek James got another touchdown this past week for Tulane. Absolutely should be grabbing him. Derek Deese, one of my favorite, this is kind of the newer name on this list, one of my favorite guys from the preseason for San Jose State. Looks like that he's finally getting his workload again. Kind of disappeared there for about 2 weeks, only had about 1.5 points per week. But now he's back. Looks like he's getting some red zone targets again. And then Peyton Hendershot, same thing I said last week. With Michael Penix kind of struggling, or Michael Penix out, Tuttle coming in as a quarterback, he's going to need a safety blanket. Peyton Hendershot's going to be a perfect option for him. So Xavier, what are your thoughts on all these guys?
Yeah, at this point with tight ends, just try to maximize your points. If your tight end's not doing so well right now, I think these are 5 great names to pick up and see how they play. I think with Jelani Woods and Lucas Kroll, with Jelani Woods coming back from injury, he still got a touchdown, even though it was I think for less than 10 yards. But still, touchdown's a touchdown. That's still 6 points on your for your fantasy team. So, and Lucas Kroll as well too with that Pittsburgh and what Kenny Pickett is doing, just a more reliable target. And everybody else, I think those are good options, to take a chance on.
I guess we can't really go through a tight end section without mentioning Mr. Isaiah Likely from this past weekend. Basically broke. I think he allowed a lot of people to break a lot of league records in terms of the most amount of points scored. I know for at least 2 of the leagues that I run, he broke the record, or he helped teams break the record for the most amount of points ever scored in those leagues. So congratulations, Mr. Likely. 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards for a tight end. That is freaking ridiculous. Anyway, so those are all our waiver wire picks for the week. Xavier, would you like to recap all of our picks for the week? I'll run through each of the graphics so you can just kind of read them off.
Yeah, sure. So at quarterback, we have number 1 with KJ Jefferson. 2, we have Jerry Bohannon. We have Hendon Hooker. Then we have Frank Harris. Then we have Casey Thompson. So then moving on to running backs, we have Brad Roberts, 2, Hassan Haskins, 3, Sir Roderick Thompson, 4, Marquez Cooper, and 5, Snoop Connor. Now we have our wide receivers. Number 1, Xavier Worthy, 2, Tyrese Chambers, 3, A.T. Perry, 4, Mitchell Tinsley, and 5, Dante Cephas. And then for our tight ends, lastly, we have Jelani Woods, 2, Lucas Kroll, 3, Tyreek James, 4, Derek Deese Jr., and 5, Peyton Hendershot.
Alrighty, so again, those are our waiver wire pickups for this week. Now, we got a lot of games to get through here because, man, oh man, was this a crazy weekend. To give you an idea of how crazy this game is, for our helmet games this week, a top 10 team going down didn't make the cut for our big 4 games of the weekend. So that should tell you just how crazy this weekend was. We got a lot to discuss. So we'll go ahead and get started with obviously the biggest story of the weekend, and that is going to be Alabama going to Texas A&M and going down. Alabama 38, Texas A&M 41. Xavier, would you like to get started on your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I guess we were finally alive, and we were fortunate enough to see a Saban assistant beat Saban. It's never been done before. It's I guess Jimbo gets that first claim of I'm 1-4 against Nick Saban. So I guess that's a highlight in itself. I guess I owe an apology. I won't say for the rest of the season, but for this game, Calzada, you really looked good out there. I was thoroughly shocked that when I was looking at the game and I went out for a little minute, I was like, he's 5 for 5 right now. I was like, I don't think he can keep this up. And he kept it up the entire game. He found Anaya Smith. He found Jalen Watermeyer. He found Isaiah Spiller and Devin Edchain. And they had a good game plan. I know a lot of people mention, in the trenches where Texas A&M looked good on both sides from an offensive line and defensive line. So it was just great. And I guess if I had to move on to the Alabama side, Bryce Young, I think it's just I'm not saying it's a terrible time for a lot of these high profile quarterbacks are looking a little bit suspect. If we talked about Oklahoma, then with the Spencer Rattler and stuff, then I won't make that comparison. But Bryce Young didn't look too impressive. I think he threw 2 interceptions and one was on the goal line.
One. He threw one interception.
He threw one?
Yeah, but he threw one.
Okay.
I'll double check that, but you keep talking.
Yeah, double check that. But I feel like it was 2. But and I mean the running game still got going with Brian Robinson. I mean, it's just more of just mistakes on the defense majority. The first half, the offense wasn't moving that much. But then the second half, they came alive because it's Bama. They have that prestige of all right, we're not just gonna fall down flat and then lose this game, getting blown out by Texas A&M with a backup quarterback. But I wholly put this on the defense's fault. I think the secondary looked exposed. The D-line still got to the quarterback, but just not in time to get sacks. They put big hits on Calzada, and he came back every single time, even though it looked like he was down and out, came out of the tent, threw another touchdown. I was just like, okay. It was just an amazing game to watch and experience. That whole weekend just was great, and then watching the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder fight, I think all of Tuscaloosa just felt terrible because Deontay Wilder is from Tuscaloosa, for y'all that don't know. So it was just not a good day for Alabama in general. I think the whole state probably lost as a whole. Auburn didn't win. Alabama didn't win. Wilder didn't win. I don't even know another Alabama school that probably won.
I think UAB won their game.
UAB? Okay.
I think they won their game. Troy, I think, also won their game as well. I got a lot of thoughts on this game. Really, again, I think you want to know the turning point in this game. It was 2 very crucial turnovers by Bama in the first half. First was a fumble that led directly to 7 points from Texas A&M. And then again, like you said, the interception that Bryce Young threw in the end zone. I think that was a huge momentum swing for this game. Made Texas A&M really... Because again, teams have gotten up on Bama before, but there's an extra step that teams have to take a lot of times with Bama where it's oh, is this happening? Then you have to take that next step of oh, we can do this. And I think those 2 turnovers really kind of created that momentum swing for A&M to really be oh, we can actually win this game. This is legitimately happening. So I think I'll point to that. You already touched on Calzada. I literally have written down in my notes, Calzada silences the haters. 21-31, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Now, that 1 interception was pretty bad, not going to lie. But even still, he had probably the game of his career. He's going to be remembered a long time for that one. You put a lot of blame on Bama's defense, and rightfully so. I'm going to put some blame on their O-line. Again, you're talking about Bryce Young not looking very good. I think a lot of that has to do with the O-line. Bama's O-line allowed 4 sacks on Bryce Young. Probably should not have happened in this game. And then they also allowed 5 tackles for loss in that running game. And this is with Brian Robinson still going for over 140 yards in this game. So Bryce Young, I think, looked perfectly average in this game. I don't think he had a bad game, but I don't think he had a great game either. He made some great throws when he needed to, thanks in large part to Jamison Williams, who is pretty clearly the number 1 wide receiver for Bama now. I mentioned before, with Oklahoma game, we'll talk about that, but Oklahoma had yet to play their 100% game. I think it's very clear now that Texas A&M had not played their 100% game, and they played their 100% game this past weekend against Bama, and it was enough to beat Bama. So
I will mention that during the episode where we talked about Bama versus Florida, I was I looking at Bryce Young, I just wasn't thoroughly impressed about he's still doing good through his first 5 or 6 starts, better than all the previous quarterbacks. But I was I found an obvious weakness when there's pressure. You don't he had in the first quarter a few good runs where I was wow, I'm surprised. And after that, you just take tackles for loss and get sacked very easily. So I always had that feeling, sneaky suspicion that it's just I don't know if it's him because he was a dual threat at a high score. If it's Bill O'Brien and what he's learning, to where he just becomes a statue in the pocket. He doesn't improvise or do anything creative to where making plays, which I guess we'll touch on with Oklahoma, where we see a quarterback clearly doing his best ability to extend plays and do miraculous things and letting his receivers, not to say bail them out, but make plays. Give it to the hands of your playmakers. So.
But yeah, no, again, I called this game completely wrong. You read off my notes last week, and I didn't have much to say. I was like, the line was too small. I expected Bama to just blow A&M out of the water. I did not expect this game to be close. I thought A&M's offense truly was putrid. Maybe there's always those rumors of teams like hiding plays and stuff like that. I don't believe any of them, but maybe that's what happened here, because that's the only way I can explain A&M's offense just having a 180 in this game. So congratulations to the Aggies. I got some Aggie friends. Gig 'em, all that good jazz. Y'all did what many thought was going to be the impossible. So congratulations to y'all. All right, let's move on to our next big helmet game, top 4 matchup. Number 4, Penn State, going on the road to number 3, Iowa. Loses. Penn State 20, Iowa 23. Xavier, I'll let you speak your thoughts on this game first.
Yeah, I didn't particularly care about this game that much. I felt like there were more interesting games. I knew the implications of what this game had, and it was a top 4 matchup, but I just knew these two teams are not top 4 quality. And I think they showed it. From the few minutes I watched, it was just back and forth of all right, Sean Clifford was not playing the best of games that he's had, to where the passing game going to get going, the running game wasn't working. He threw some touchdown. He threw a few touchdowns and ran for one that got them up 14-10 before the half.
17-3 or 17-10 at the half, I believe.
17 at the half. Okay, then. So he got them up before he ultimately went down. So I was like, he was doing his best to keep him in that game, but I just wasn't impressed. And then once he went down, it just all looked like the momentum swifted for Iowa. And for all the people that kind of made fun of Iowa for storming the field, I don't see the problem with it. I think Iowa being ranked number 2.
Let's talk about this for a second. When it comes to storming fields and everything, if you have a legitimate problem with fans storming the field, get out of here. To me, that's a massive part. When your team gets a massive win, celebrate. Yeah. That's the whole thing.
I think in certain situations, maybe it's not warranted. Maybe say if it was Alabama this year and they were still undefeated and they beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl and they stormed the field, I'd be like, okay, this is kind of weird. But
if this is a close win and they fought, say Alabama, let's take A&M Alabama, put it in Tuscaloosa. Alabama does come back and wins that game. They storm the field.
Nah.
I think that's warranted. I think a comeback victory like that, I think it's warranted.
You're the number 1 team in the nation. I mean, you ultimately won the game, but I don't see it. But I think in terms of Iowa, the fact that you're rated number 2 in the nation now off of this win, you have every absolute right to storm the field, because you knew what would happen if you would lose, to where you wouldn't drop that far, but your playoff chances are almost over. Almost.
I mean, I think both of these teams still have their entire future ahead of them.
Absolutely.
It's very, again, win and you're in at this point. Iowa especially, have you looked at their schedule going forward?
Yeah.
There's not a team.
Big Ten championship. That's all they have to do.
Hell, I don't even know if they have to do that, if I'm being real. I don't even know about that. We'll see. But even so, things that stuck out to me here. Once again, Iowa secondary. What the hell? 4 interceptions again for them. You can't stop them. You can't stop them. And it's one of them was direct. Some people were criticizing Clifford early on in the game for his interceptions. One of them was bad. He tried to make something out of nothing near his own goal line. Tripped, fell, threw the ball, went right to an Iowa defender. It was a bad decision on his part. He should have just gone down or thrown the ball away. The other one was just a 50-50 ball, deep shot. It was, like I said, it was going to be a 50-50 shot whether or not his guy came up with it or not. And in a game like that, where sometimes if you can hit that shot, get those 7 points, that's game right there. I think Sean Clifford put Penn State in a position to win this game, and their defense did everything that they could for it. If Clifford stayed in this entire game, was healthy this entire game, I do think Penn State wins this game. it really just went downhill after Roberson went in there. And I'm not going to knock Roberson too much because, like, when I was watching him, when he had it, he had it. The problem was when he didn't have it. And you're looking at a guy who went 7 for 21 for only 34 yards after Clifford goes out of this game, throws 2 interceptions, both of them on a deep ball. I think really, again, like, I'm not one to say, like, oh, if just one player was not injured, this whole game would have been different. I think Penn State wins this game if Clifford stayed in the entire game. He had a lot of momentum going into that half before he got hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe if they kept Will Levis around, maybe they would have been fine at backup quarterback.
Yeah, I've been doing actually a little bit of research into that, and for what it sounds like, there was no way they were keeping Will Levis.
Oh yeah, probably.
It sounds like it just wasn't working out well for him.
Yeah, probably was starter quality, which
And
he's doing well at Kentucky.
Yes. We'll move on to our next game here. 103 points scored in this one, and many people calling it the game of the year. And quite frankly, it's a great contender. Not gonna lie.
Absolutely.
Red River Shootout. Number 6 Oklahoma 55. Number 21 Texas 48. Xavier, what are your thoughts on this game?
All right, I have to take a breath before I get to this massacre that I have to do with the Longhorns because I've never seen. I've only seen maybe a few other choke jobs of this magnitude, and one comes to mind as, you know, for all of our Georgia listeners, you understand when you have a 28 to something lead, bad things can happen. But I was like, oh no, this is in Georgia. You had a 28-7 lead after the first quarter, and I was like, okay, Texas has the momentum. I could see OU kind of sneaking their way back in. But then going into half, I was like, okay, Texas still has a formidable lead. But then after the half, defense just became non-existent. Now, I will say I was a little bit concerned about what the amount of injuries that Texas was amassing during this entire game. But at the same time, you have to make stops. Like, just anything. If you just get one stop during the third or fourth quarter, you've essentially won the game. But no, you just couldn't. As soon as Spencer Rattler was pulled, and you let Caleb Williams go out there, and the first time he goes out there, he runs a QB draw run for a touchdown. You could tell, oh God, Texas is in trouble. I mean, it was just unfathomable how bad you could just like crumble in the face of like just any type of adversity, to where you had the lead. Casey Thompson played the game of his life. Bijan Robinson did his job. Xavier Worthy looks really great. With Jordan Wingington going down, you still look good. But the defense couldn't do anything at all. Like, your run defense was terrible. Your passing defense, I don't even know which one was worse. You let Marvin Mims make 2 spectacular catches off of Caleb Williams. I'm not going to say they were bad throws, but Caleb Williams made like some tremendous throws off balance, just wide arm down the field, 50+ yards. And Marvin Mims just showed, hey, I am a 4 to 5 star receiver that can make plays on these terrible Texas defensive backs. And then the front 7 for Texas, you let Kenny Brooks just have his way with you. And I think it's solidified now for all the people that had hope for Eric Gray like me. And then, it just showed that Kennedy Brooks is back and that he can run the football to where he iced the game. Where all Oklahoma needed was a field goal. And he just runs for a touchdown. That's the worst way to go out. All those, for all the people that had the freezing cold takes about Texas is back after the first quarter, I was almost with you. I even talked to Jordan. I was like, can I say the 3 magic words? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay.
I told you no.
I didn't do it. I did not do it because I understood where he was coming from. And you showed why, that you will always and forever will never be back. I just don't see. And now you're coming to the SEC. You will not be able to squeak by this with against SEC opponents. I'm sorry. You are the epitome of like just a meme at this point. I don't know what to say so much bad about Texas. I enjoyed the Sarkisian offense. I thought this is what I envisioned with the Sarkisian offense. You need a defense. You need to just cut all those players loose and then find a portal for like students, like have a tryout, a walk-on tryout, and find some talent there. Because it's not there in that Texas secondary or like front 7. It was abysmal what I saw in that second half.
Golly, you're still going.
It just was so.
I was ready for a rant. I was not ready for that.
I was just so disappointed because Oklahoma. I guess I haven't even talked about Oklahoma that much and given.
No, you haven't said a word about Oklahoma yet. Hardly.
It's just more about like being like Oklahoma's like they're squeaking by every week, And I'm thinking like, wow, Texas is up 28-7. Maybe we'll finally have we won't have to put Oklahoma in the college football playoffs. And you give them this game to keep them relevant, and now they're top 4, which I think anybody with eyes would realize that Oklahoma, for the competition that they have played, they don't look like a top 4 team in the nation. But we have to give them that credit because they're undefeated. So it's Caleb Williams. If Lincoln Riley makes the right decision and starts Caleb Williams from then on, then I could say maybe see Oklahoma having some quality because their offense was moving. And I think the offense responds way better with Caleb Williams than with Spencer Rattler. So it's really a big decision for Lincoln Riley, but it's really not that hard of a decision to make. But if he makes the wrong one, then from then on, I don't see Oklahoma being a top 4 team.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm absolutely done.
No, you too. I love it. I'm clipping that later. I'm posting that on Twitter. That was an epic rant. I love it. Love it. You're blaming the Texas defense. I'm gonna take the other side, or not the other side here. I'm gonna point fingers at their offense. 10 points scored in the second half. That's after what you did in the first half. That was abysmal. You got one good long pass to Xavier Worthy for a touchdown, but really that was most of what Texas could muster. I remember talking to you during this game, Xavier, and there was several 3-and-out drives, and by the third one, you were like, okay, Texas, I guess you just don't want to win this game, and they couldn't get anything going. And again, as much as I love Casey Thompson, I'm rooting for the guy, but man, they couldn't get anything going on offense in that second half for the most part. So
he did have that wrist injury.
He did have the wrist injury, which, again, hopefully that doesn't affect him too much going forward. But even still, I'm going to point fingers at the Texas offense there. Also, point fingers at Oklahoma defense stepping up, man. They use that momentum well. In addition to that, any other thoughts? I'm looking through my notes trying to see what you didn't touch on. We touched on Xavier Worthy earlier. 9 receptions, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns. Absolute breakout game for him. Marvin Mims finally freaking shows up. Turns out all you needed was a quarterback that can make the right decision of when to throw him the ball. And he had 5 receptions for 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. So hopefully we get some Marvin Mims action going throughout the week. I want my prediction of a Oklahoma wide receiver not being in the top 24 wide receivers to be true, but also I love Marvin Mims, so I would love to see him take off from here. In addition to that, yeah, again, you can't really there are 1 or 2 things in this game I could say just really didn't go Texas's way in terms of refereeing. Specifically, there was a fumble by Kennedy Brooks late in the third quarter that I thought it was kind of BS that they ruled him down. Everything that I saw said that was a fumble recovered by Texas. I'm not sure why they made the decision to go the way that they did, but regardless, I've said it before, never put yourself in a position to where a game is decided by a ref's call.
Yeah.
So,
and I will put a little bit of blame on Sarkisian, where I felt like you kind of went away from the run game just a tad bit in the second half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we saw Bijan go for that epic run. That was probably that run is probably going to get him in the first round of the NFL draft in 2 years.
Absolutely.
That exact run. So, I think we've said pretty much all we can say on this game. Like I said earlier when I was teasing it, a lot of people said it's possibly the game of the year. We got a long way to go in this season. I would not be surprised if this is in the top 3 games by the end of the year. It was an epic game, perfect atmosphere, perfect storylines in this game. Every player on both teams, every major player made plays during this game. You'll love to see it. So, let us move on to our final helmet game of the week. And this one went for 103 points. This one outdid them slightly. Exact same amount of points. 103 points in this game as well. Number 13, Arkansas, 51. Number 17, Ole Miss, 52. So, Xavier, what are your thoughts on this game?
You know what? I think you should go first. I had a long rant about Oklahoma, Texas, because I watched that game extensively, and you watched the Ole Miss Arkansas game, and I only tuned in probably around the fourth quarter, but I was hearing good things, and from looking at the play-by-plays and the stats, I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected for this game. So I want you to give your side.
I got notes. We already talked about KJ Jefferson, the hell of a day that he had. 20 carries, second most on the team for 85 yards and 3 touchdowns. 25 out of 35 attempts for 325 yards, 3 touchdowns. This was the game of his life. a lot of people kind of questioning him after the Georgia game. Just really did not have a great game in that game. Went up against a defense that is way worse. And we saw that KJ Jefferson easily could be one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Treylon Burks finally has another one of his breakout games. We've been, again, injured early on in the year. We've been waiting to see him just consistently have these epic games. We finally got one this past week. 7 receptions, 136 yards, and a touchdown. He was back. And really, when you look at the yardage in this game, it was just so even between these teams. And at the end of the day, it really was like you saw it on the scoreboard. Arkansas could have tied this game, sent it in overtime. We all know now that, like, obviously Sam Pittman goes for the 2-point conversion. I think it was the right decision. We kind of teased this earlier. I think it was the right decision. You have Matt Corral in that Ole Miss offense, going to overtime with them, just counting on them to execute. Yeah, that's an elite offense. They're going to execute in an overtime setting. Arkansas is a ground and pound offense. When you don't have the clock on your side, you don't want to put yourself in that position. So I think it was absolutely the right decision. Unfortunately, Jefferson just couldn't make that final play that we needed him to. Other notes on this game, Matt Corral does Matt Corral things. That's pretty much all you need to know there. Henry Parrish, Snoop Connor easily pick up the slack for Jerry Ely being out. We already talked about Snoop Connor. Henry Parrish also has over 100 yards in this game. Thing I thought was interesting in this game was just how spread around the ball was for Ole Miss. There was not a receiver on that team that had over 2 catches. Now there was 1 or 2 that went over 100 yards. Like, look it up. Like, you got a quizzical look on your face, Xavier, but like, look it up. There's only 2 receptions for the most receptions on the team. And then this game is just the perfect way to end the game. 20 points scored in the last 90 seconds of this game. You want to talk about 2 teams just giving it their all for this game? That's it right there. So there's my rant on this game. This was one of the games I was looking forward to the most this weekend, and it paid off massively. So what do you think, Xavier?
Yeah, I had to make sure. I thought Dontario Drummond had about like 3 or 4, and I was like, I knew everybody else had like 2 or 1, but I was like, I felt like there was 1. But no, you were absolutely right. Braylon Sanders, I think this was his coming out game where, a lot of people were like questioning who's going to be the wide receiver 1. Still think it's Drummond, but Sanders had a good day with Mingo out, to step in and, hey, I can be 1 or 2. So, but I really want to touch on, I think we're seeing, not to say a shift. I think we're seeing one of those moments where it happens, once every few years, where we're seeing a lot of true freshmen step up. I think this is the most times where,
oh my God, I forgot to mention Rocket.
Yeah, Rocket Sanders. I think we haven't seen this in a while where, I know your one of your mantras is like, I just don't trust freshmen that much. And I was like, yeah, I have the same way, but there's always that one that can explode. And I think this has been the year of the running back with Travion Henderson and Rocket Sanders. I just love what I'm seeing from both of them. I mean, and especially with Rocket Sanders, like he had a little bit stiffer competition with Traylon Smith being that lead back and being there for so long. Like Travion Henderson, all you had to do was kind of just beat out Master Teague. I mean, but
Master Teague, and then Mayan Williams gets injured.
Yeah, Mayan Williams gets injured, but I mean that's another freshman as well too. But Travion has just been out of this world. But Rocket Sanders is slowly creeping up to where I'm just like, wow, that RB class, in 3 to 4 years going off to the NFL is looking a lot better and better. So I just love that. Arkansas, I didn't think they could be that balanced of a team. Honestly, I mean, I love Treylon Burks, but I was like, I feel like if your teams are looking out for, hey, this guy's clear number 1, then maybe defenses will kind of key in on that and then take that away from you. But KJ Jefferson did what he needed to do, although with his legs and his arm, hitting his receivers, hitting Treylon Burks. Everybody got a piece of the ball. So I just commend both sides. I think they're still like the AP poll shows, they're still both top 25 quality teams. And I think nobody should look past this and say, hey, maybe they're back to being same old Arkansas. I'm like, no, Arkansas is a really good team. I think they're going to have a good rest of the year besides Bama and, be able to make a good bowl game and probably even win that bowl game depending on who they play.
Yeah, again, I think this game kind of confirmed for a lot of people what they were thinking last week, is that these are 2 good teams.
Yep.
These are 2 good teams. These are 2 top 25 teams, hell, even top 15 teams in my opinion. I think Arkansas might have dropped just a little too far for losing by 1 point this past week. But even still, like, these were teams that people should have expected to have been able to challenge Bama, to have been able to challenge Georgia, at least a little bit. that didn't happen. But even still, like, these are still good teams at the end of the day. And I think these are teams that really just got to keep an eye out going forward. That SEC West, man, that's going to be crazy. I have no clue how that's going to end up working itself out. Because, again, like we said, Mississippi State might be last in the division. I'm still holding on that, but I really don't know. And, like, nobody's going down without a fight in that division this year.
Yeah, LSU is looking worse and worse, and I'm just like, I never would have thought.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting LSU. All right, let's move on to our games of interest, like our other games of interest. Those are our big 4 games of the weekend. And like I said, in these games of interest, we got a top 10 team going down. That should tell you just how awesome this week was for this past week. Absolutely awesome. We'll go ahead and move on to those. Let's start with number 2, Georgia, 34. Number 18, Auburn, 10. Xavier, I'll let you get started with this while I take a note or two here.
Okay, let me get my magic eraser and just erase that number 2 to the now number 1 Georgia Bulldogs.
Hold on. Keep that eraser going.
We're gonna get it going.
Keep it going. All right. It's been erased.
And we're gonna chalk it in number 1.
All right, number 1. There you go.
There we go. I appreciate it. Yeah, we were number 2 at the time, and barring that Alabama game, now we are number 1 in the nation. It feels weird as a Georgia fan to have this thing called hope, where I'm still being realistic.
Oh no, we're quite familiar with hope.
Oh, we're quite familiar with it, but
we're not familiar with it paying off.
Yeah, we're still hesitant about a few things. It's still a dangerous game to play, but we are the number 1 team in the nation. As you all know, me and Jared are Georgia fans. We've gone to the University of Georgia, graduated. We are homers till we die. But let's talk about this game. So I will say in the first quarter, Auburn, you had us sweating just a little bit. I was genuinely like thinking, oh God, don't tell me we looked ahead. I wasn't thinking we were going to lose this game, but I did not need to have 4 quarters of just like, please don't do this to me.
No struggle wins. And Georgia did what they needed to do. And I think I have to give praise to Stetson Bennett. A lot of people have been saying controversial things about him of like, oh God, Stetson's in the game. Oh, come on, JT needs to get healthy. And now there's this new thing where the media is trying to have a quarterback controversy with him and JT. Let's just put that to bed. It's still JT's team. JT is the better quarterback. Stetson is a good backup quarterback, and he's doing his job. This is the perks of being the number 1 team in the nation. We had a walk-on quarterback that's been with the program for years, left, came back because he loves Georgia so much and knows the offense so well that he can just, be able to manage these games and have all the talent around him to just maximize that. So I give all the credit to Stetson Bennett. I'm not going to say, he's moved up from game manager to me to where he could be a decent quarterback in the SEC. Yeah, my thoughts here. God, it might happen. We won this game, like Xavier said. I was sweating a little bit in that first quarter. I was not quite emotionally prepared for a dogfight in that game. Like, I don't think I ever really doubted that we could win that game at the end of the day. But also, I know how Auburn can be. I know how that rivalry can be sometimes. And yeah, I wasn't quite emotionally prepared for that. A couple notes that I wanted to point out here. Bo Nix, I think, had probably his best day passing in quite a while. Like, he was hitting receivers in stride. Now, there were a lot of drop balls, don't get me wrong. And I think that was more on the receivers than Bo Nix. I think he was about as on point as he could get with that receiving core.
Disagree.
But he had one of his worst days rushing. He really fell in love, I think, with that media narrative that, he's a Houdini artist. He can get out of anything. And that set Auburn back so many times when Georgia's able to get, I think they got 4 sacks on the day. And I know for a fact at least all of them were for at least 5 to 10 yards each.
Oh, no, there were some big ones.
Well, there was one that went about like 20, 30 yards back before they finally got him down. I was just like, you can't do that. But even still, like I'll credit Bo Nix for having one of his best days passing. So anyway, you want to disagree with me on something there?
I will say this. I think, looking at the game, I noticed I was like, yeah, there were some drop balls, but Bo Nix has a knack for just throwing like heaters. Like you're throwing like,
you're
throwing like at MLB 99 miles per hour. Like you're hitting your receivers in stride, but I don't think your receivers are like that talented to catch those balls. So I put a little bit of blame on both sides.
I'm going to put a big but here. I'm going to say, but he was going up against Georgia's defense, and you can't put floaters in the air on that defense.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where he's just like, you got to catch this, otherwise a DB is going to catch this. So I won't blame him too much for that. Two players I want to shout out here. Ladd McConkey. Wow. 5 receptions, 135 yards, and a touchdown. You don't see that from a Georgia receiver very often.
Hold on. What was his star ranking again? For all the people that don't think that we don't develop our wide receivers.
3-star.
3-star? Really?
Yes.
You would think, for a guy that had, over 100 and something yards against Auburn. Man, that's just surprising.
A true freshman too.
True freshman. Wow.
So it's like you would think. And then also, the other name I want to bring up here is Zamir White, Zeus White, whatever you want to call him. I'm putting this out there. I didn't put him on the waiver wires for this week and everything, but I'm putting out there. He had 18 carries for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. I'm just putting out the idea that Zeus is probably worth keeping on your watch list over the next couple of weeks, especially as Georgia really tries to win this war of attrition with their thousands upon thousands of injuries. I really think that Zamir White's going to be getting a bigger and bigger workload every single week. So I think he's going to be worth something.
Hold on, give me a second. I just want to see, because I remember last year he was on a streak of getting a touchdown every game. I wonder, in the past, 4 games, he's gotten a touchdown. And 2 of those, in the past 2 games, he's gotten over 2. So I think we're seeing another streak happening again because, the last time he didn't score was against UAB, and that's because we just didn't need to.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. There's something else I wanted to bring up about this game.
Oh, no, I think I know exactly what you want to. To all the Auburn fans out there about, blaming the refs, no.
That actually wasn't it. But if you want to go down that road, you can real quick.
We can go down that road. I understand the call that Bo Nix was referencing to. And I will admit, as a Georgia fan, I did think that it should have been pass interference. But I will say that one play wasn't going to determine that entire game for you. You weren't going to win because you got, the penalty and possibly would have got that touchdown. You still lost by 4 scores. It just wasn't going to happen. I don't think a momentum shift would have happened for Auburn at that point. It just looked like we were just too dominant on defense at the time. Kirby would have still had things right and schemed up, and Dan Lanning as well too, to be able to contain Bo Nix and get those sacks. So, like Jared always says, don't let one call determine your entire game.
I'm sorry, blaming the refs for a 24-point loss at home. Good luck with that one.
Good luck.
I remember what else I wanted to talk about here, and regards to Stetson Bennett. So again, I've been doing some reading and everything, and kind of reading some insider notes and everything about what's the plan with Stetson Bennett and everything. And there is a lot of talk that Stetson Bennett, if he stays at Georgia, would be a legitimate option to be a starting quarterback next year. Now, again, these are insider information. This is subject to change. A lot of that has to do with how Brock Vandagriff looks in the final couple games for Georgia, Charleston Southern, Georgia Tech. These are games that Georgia is preparing Brock Vandagriff to take over early in these games to see how he is commanding the offense. If Brock Vandagriff is successful in those games and looks the part as a starting quarterback for Georgia, he is more than likely the guy the next year, in which case you will see Stetson Bennett probably enter the transfer portal. And I have to say, again, a couple years ago, and this is the thought I had while I was reading it, where I was like, is this the same way that Bama fans felt when Jalen Hurts entered the transfer portal? Where you just feel legitimately sad knowing that that's probably what has to happen, but man, it still breaks your heart regardless. I don't know. It's probably not the topic for this podcast, but I just wanted to talk about that because I when I read that I was like, man, it would really suck watching Stetson go off somewhere else.
I think with this, I know they talked about during the broadcast of the game where Stetson was legit thinking about, not playing football anymore. I think he was like, I played enough football, I played it at every level. So I don't know if he would actually come back for one more year. I think Kirby would have to have the speech of his life for him to convince him that, hey, stay one more year at Georgia. Or just
he's not dumb. If he comes back and starts next year, he knows he's just a placeholder until Brock gets ready or Gunner gets ready, whichever one really steps up.
I'm only questioning about not to say it's hard to play football, but at a certain time, you got to call it quits at a certain point. You got to move on with your life and continue on. You're not going to be a draft pick or anything. So, I mean, it would be nice as fans as like, hey, you could have one more year and you have that COVID extra year of eligibility, or you could just say, hey, let me just graduate. And,
I would love to see again. If he did transfer out and went somewhere else and played one more year, I would root for him so hard. He would probably be one of my favorite players in football. Anyway, we talked way too long about this. Sorry, y'all, for all the Georgia talk, but we had a great weekend this weekend. We watched a lot of other people lose, so it was great to not be on that list of losers. We'll go ahead and move on to our next game here, and that is going to be number 9, Michigan 32, Nebraska 29. Oh, this was a great game. Xavier, do you have any thoughts on this game before or you want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
It just feels the fact that I have to say this, I feel bad for Scott Frost at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think Nebraska looks like a quality team that just can't get over that. Like, you can't get over the hump. And it's like, you're so close. Like, I think, you push these teams to the edge every single week of these quality teams. Michigan State, Oklahoma, now Michigan again, where you're only losing by like one score, like maybe like, just a fluke chance of like, Jalen Reed taking a punt back or anything like that. But you're so close. And for Michigan to not have a passing touchdown, like Cade McNamara managed that game very well, but the run game for Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum was just too much, which I was surprised about because they shut down Kenneth Walker completely. But I guess when you have a duo, things just be a little bit easier.
Need some fresher legs in there.
Yeah, but it's so weird to say, but I have to give credit to Adrian Martinez for what he's done this season. It just feels so weird. I know I feel like he's on a bunch of waiver wires. Like he's like
70% owned at this point.
Yeah, but he's still like on like 30% more. Where I'm like, that last 30% is like, look, as soon as I pick him up, I just know it's just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, he's been a valuable asset to have in a lot of fantasy teams. He's putting up around like 25 plus a game. So it's so, I feel bad for Nebraska as a whole. Like I wasn't going to root for you to like win the Big Ten or anything like that. But man, you deserve.
They need an upset at this point. They've come too close too many times.
Yeah, I want to see them in a bowl game. I actually thoroughly enjoy watching Nebraska play, even though if you're coming from behind every single time, you always make the games exciting and push these teams to the edge. So that's all of my thoughts on that game.
I'm pretty much the exact same way. Like, as soon as you said, like, I feel bad for Nebraska and Scott Frost, and I'm like, I'm the exact same way. I just feel bad for them at this point. This is mind-blowing the last couple of weeks for them. First of all, shout out to the Nebraska fans for filling up their stadium this past week against Michigan and everything, just creating a great environment there. Like,
they know.
They know they're so close, and they just keep getting. I will say though, I think Nebraska again. I maintain, never put yourself in a position to where one ref's call can screw you on a game. But Nebraska got hosed in this game on not their final drive, but the drive before. Their running back, I think it was Ramir Johnson, might have been one of their other ones, ran for a first down, ran to a wall of guys, and the refs refused to blow the whistle. It was like he was stuck there, forward progress stop for like 2 or 3 seconds, ball pops out. And Michigan recovers. Michigan kicks the game-winning field goal. Nebraska can't convert on the next drive. But even so, I'm like, they got so hosed on that. Like, I'm not going to pretend like that was the game-defining moment of the game. But man, Nebraska they find incredible ways to lose, and I feel bad. That's all I want to say here.
I'll say this though. How do you feel about Michigan being ranked? They're currently 8 right now.
So
what's the difference between Michigan and Michigan State? Like, why is Michigan State not higher than Michigan?
That's a great question. I think it has more to do with that.
Because we can't look at that Wisconsin win. I'm sorry, Wisconsin is not a quality win anymore at all. It hasn't been this entire season. So I don't understand.
I'm trying to. I think more has to do with just a lot of Michigan State's earlier wins not aging quite as well, like the Miami win. I think that's kind of similar to the Wisconsin win at this point. Although I'd say Wisconsin's probably a better win than Miami at this point.
I don't know, but you went to Miami though. but they did go to Wisconsin.
I was saying they went to Wisconsin. Yeah,
So,
it's hard. I would have them right next to each other. That's gonna be a great game when those two finally face off. I forget it. Who plays at home this year out of those two? Can you look that up real quick?
At Michigan State. So
at Michigan State. That's gonna be a good one. That's gonna be such a good one. Yeah, no, I think they're two evenly matched teams, and I don't think Michigan. If you're gonna rank Michigan at number 10, you should have Michigan at number 9, or vice versa. Like I think they should be right next to each other.
They have Michigan State at 10, and they have Michigan at 8, and Oregon's in the middle for some reason, but who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm not sure why they're disrespecting Michigan State like that. We'll find again. They will have their chance to prove it later on this year. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We got several more games to get through here. We got hold on, let me put up the graphic. We got Boise State, 26, taking down number 10 BYU. They scored 17 points. I will take over here on this one. Really, this game came down to turnovers. And it's one of those things where when you see a team not turning the ball over and everything, or another team turning the ball over a lot of times, you start to think like, oh, this team's turnover prone. This team like holds onto the ball really well. Every once in a while, you will get a game where they screw up constantly. BYU fumbled the ball 3 times in this game. And that is the major difference here at the end of the day. Tyler, and he threw a pick. But really, to me, it was the fumbles, because they kept talking on the broadcast like they haven't fumbled the ball this year at all. 3 fumbles in this game, 2 in the first half, 1 in the second half. That's your dagger right there. That's what's going to kill BYU in this game. Tyler Algier was a relative disappointment, I'd say, for a rushing defense that was over 100th in the country. He only amassed 19 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown, especially after last week. That kind of shocked me a little bit. But overall, big win for Boise. BYU's what did BYU drop down to? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think they're. That's a good question. They are 19. So you went from 10 to 19.
I think that's fair. I personally think that's fair. Pretty decent drop. I think that's right where they should be right about now.
Yeah, absolutely. All the teams ahead of them are definitely, I would take over BYU. Maybe Arizona State is above them, so that's a little bit questionable.
That is a little bit questionable because BYU did beat Arizona State. But even still, that's kind of my thoughts on the game. Any thoughts you want to throw out there, Xavier?
Nope. I just wish that Khalil Shakir, he did have an amazing catch, but I just really would like more work from him like earlier, because he only came alive second half.
No, I think that's 100% fair. Making sure I got my notes in order for this next one. All right, let's move on to the next one, and that is going to be a very similar game, or exact same score as the Michigan State-Nebraska game. Number 14, Notre Dame survives Virginia Tech 32-29. Xavier, I'll let you take the point on this one if you want it.
Yeah, I don't know. Tyler Buckner looked good for a freshman. He still had made some mistakes. It just, it's normal for a freshman to do that, but he did look good. I think we both picked the upset in this game. It definitely was close.
Close.
We were not like wrong in our logic, but Notre Dame just had a little bit more talent. Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree did well. Notre Dame's defense still allowed 29 points, but they did what they needed to do in the end. No Michael Myers, so you lost a big part of your passing offense. So that's why they had to kind of probably rely on Tyler Buckner a little bit more with his legs. So, overall, I'm not regretting anything about the pick, but Notre Dame showed why they're ranked and Virginia Tech is not.
Again, like, say what you will about Notre Dame's wins being unimpressive, at the end of the day, they're winning. Yeah. When you're a team that just finds a way to win, that counts for something. And I don't have a ton of notes on this game, and really, the thing I was surprised by was just how much work Tyler Buckner got. I was kind of surprised by that. I guess Notre Dame is just starting to look towards the future. They realize that they need to start developing him now. And again, on a lot of plays, he looked good, showed off that 4-star ability. Other times, you remember that he's a freshman. He had 2 pretty bad picks in this game, so just freshman mistakes, in my opinion. And there was a reason why. Jack Cohn went in the final 2 drives. The first one to get the final touchdown, and then the final one to get the final field goal. There's a reason for that. Brian Kelly knew that. It's like, all right, if I throw Buckner out there, higher chance of a mistake. Jack Cohn less likely to, or he's far less mistake prone. Not going to really throw this game away for us, so I think we'll rely on him. Yeah, I don't have a ton of notes on this game, but it was still a great game. Go back and watch this if you haven't checked it out. I know there's a ton of other games going on at the same time. Key one being the Alabama-Texas A&M game, but y'all go back and watch some of these games. These were incredible.
Yeah.
Another game I think flew under the radar for a lot of people was the number 19 Wake Forest surviving Syracuse 40-37 in overtime. So Xavier, you specifically, or no, you didn't request this one. The final two, or you requested this one, so I'll let you take the point on this one.
Yeah. I'm not saying I completely, but it's really close. Where I feel bad for Syracuse. I think they look like a really good program this year, and they're getting a lot of close losses. I think they're pushing their teams in the ACC. Well, okay, I'll put it in context of a good team in the ACC. I think with, like you said, names we mentioned early on in our podcast when we first started, you thought Garrett Shrader would be a guy that'd be pushing for that starting QB job, and he's looked impressive with his dual threat ability. And Sean Tucker, a guy that I saw, and I was like, man, as a freshman, he got a big workload. Maybe he could expand upon that. Now, Sean Tucker is an every week starter. I don't care who he's facing. Mm-hmm. I think the volume that he gets and the fact that he also has displayed in some other games, that's with Garrett Shrader not being the quarterback, but he has some pass catching ability, and he's really good at it. So I think Syracuse as a whole is a really good team. And in this game, they started out really well. I thought that, man, could this be Wake Forest's first loss? And it just came down to the wire. Like the first quarter and then the second quarter, Syracuse looked like they were leading ahead. I mean, they were leading ahead early. Then Wake Forest started to make some comebacks, and then the second half, then that's when they started trading blows. And then ultimately the game went into overtime, and Sam Hartman and A.T. Perry just ended the game. So it came down to a little bit of a heartbreak, but I love the Syracuse team and what they're doing.
You pretty much covered both of the points I want to talk about, and that was Garrett Shrader and Sean Tucker. Again, Wake Forest did what I expected Wake Forest to do, but really the story to me there was Syracuse fighting for this game. Again, forcing it overtime. At the end of the day, it just a perfectly placed ball from Sam Hartman puts the game out of reach in overtime, and that was it at the end of the day. So that's really, again, I don't have a ton of thoughts on this game. So
Garrett Shrader with 29 carries for 178 yards is ridiculous.
Yep. I love me some Garrett Shrader. Again, and I think it's just proving more and more that these ACC matchups have just become like how we used to view Big 12 matchups, where it's just like they're going to score 30 points each, probably, more than likely. There's like a whole group of them that you just know that's the amount of points they're going to be scoring every single week. So, yeah. We'll go ahead and move on to our next game, and that is going to be Maryland. Scores 17 against number 7 Ohio State, who scored, just a tiny 66 on Maryland. My God, what a statement win for Ohio State. I know Maryland is not okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I saw your face. This was a statement win for Ohio State in the fact that Maryland does not have a terrible offense. And Ohio State has been known to have a very suspect defense so far this year. And their offense has struggled at times, particularly that passing game. They put every bit of doubt to rest in this game on that. CJ Stroud was on fire. 24 out of 33, 406 yards, 5 touchdowns. Absolutely blew the doors open. TreVeyon Henderson had another great day. This is where I was supposed to ask you, where I just looked at my notes. This is where I was supposed to ask you about Bijan Robinson versus TreVeyon Henderson, but I threw it earlier in the show. Ohio State, I think, is a team that a lot of people left for dead after their Oregon loss. I think that they were saying oh, well, that's it. Ohio State's not who we thought they were. They're not going to, or somebody else is going to beat them in the Big Ten. They're not going to the playoff anymore. They're absolutely going to get another loss. I don't think so. I think they're one of these teams that is going to be improving as the year goes on. And by the time we get to the conference championship time, by the time we get to playoff time, they're going to be sitting right there as one of those teams that somebody's going to be like, we gave up on them way too early, and they are now a legitimate contender for the title this year. So that's really all I want to talk about here. Again, Maryland, you tried your best. No longer crab season. Talia threw 2 more interceptions, and for some reason, Raheem Jarrett only got 1 target. So good job, Maryland. What are your thoughts, Xavier?
Yeah, I'll say this. I wasn't one of those people that left them for dead after Oregon. I kind of started weaning off of them after I looked at the Tulsa win. And I was like, I don't like what your team looks like right now. I don't think you're in a good place. But I didn't write them out for the Big Ten championship. I still have them going to the Big Ten championship. I think their offense is that explosive. And I think, like you said, they're going to be a team that gets better week by week. And I think their defense will improve. Yeah, I was just like, for all those people that, had those doubts about CJ Stroud early on of like, oh, maybe he's not the guy, give Kyle McCord a chance. And Kyle McCord did well against Ohio. I was like, it's still CJ Stroud's job. Like, I think it's just very noticeable of like what he could do with the ball on his arm is just really special and what they have. Mm-hmm. So, and I think, for all those people that like support Chris Olave, I think this is his first time where he's like really, not to say broken out, but like this is probably his best game of by far this season.
Oh, easily.
Yeah. So I think a lot of those the people that are owners of Chris Olave were very happy this weekend. And Garrett Wilson has shown consistency every single week. Didn't have 100 yards, still had 2 touchdowns though, so he makes up for it. And Jackson Smith and Jigaboo looks like that next man up, so it's going to be really interesting next year.
He's going to be probably going to be a first round wide receiver for fantasy next year.
Absolutely. So it's just looking well for Ohio State's offense. Hopefully their defense can get it together. They do have some tough injuries on defense, but overall, you were able to contain that Maryland offense to 17 points, to where I kind of felt like Iowa broke Maryland. Like they were looking good early on because they had some easy games to play. Mm. But I was like, once Maryland faces some stiffer competition, I didn't rate Maryland that highly of like, all right, yeah, they could, make some noise. Like, nah, it's still Maryland at the end of the day. But I am kind of sad about Rakeem Jarrett. I'm just wondering what's going on with maybe him and Talia don't have that connection anymore, or maybe him and the coaches are not drawing up enough plays for him.
Yeah, we got to make a decision on that for our Kings Classic team this week. Yeah.
Especially with Bemis gone. That's just really interesting. So.
All right, we got 2 more games to get through here. These are really I'll peek behind the curtain. These were 2 specific games that Xavier wanted to talk about this week. So we'll go ahead and move on to them. 2 ACC games here. Virginia 34, Louisville 33. Xavier, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it was a good game. Like you said, we're looking at the ACC for these high over-unders. At this point now, where they're putting up a lot of points and playing almost 0 to none, just no defense at all. So 0 to none. Great saying. But it was really an interesting game because Malik Cunningham, I was just shocked to see how like he wasn't as electric running the ball. Mm-hmm. He didn't even crack 50 yards, didn't have a rushing touchdown. Hassan Hall was the main story for the running back room, to where he looked like the best back, junior. So I was surprised Jalen Mitchell, he did get a touchdown, but it was only on like 8 carries. And Travion Coley, a lot of names that we were thinking that would push Jalen Mitchell, but it was Hassan Hall at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And then you had Tyler Harrell. He had a long of 92, but that's mainly it for their receiving. So I was like, it was just really weird because Virginia wasn't looking good in the early part of that game, but then they started coming alive with Brennan Armstrong. So I was like, okay. Because they did score first, but then after a while, it was like, okay. We'll see how Virginia looks, because they kept settling for field goals. And then there was a lot of missed field goals for a while. There was like 2 back-to-back by both teams, and then fumbles. So overall for this game, I just love what Brennan Armstrong is doing, to where even though like we looked into this year and we're thinking like, yeah, we're going to get a dual threat quarterback, he's doing a lot with his arm. And I think he's making up for that lack of rushing ability, to where he's throwing the touchdowns and he's getting a lot of yards with it. And I think this is just a bad game for Malik. Well, not technically a bad game because he didn't throw an interception, but not one of his best.
Yeah, the only real note, again, peek behind the curtain here again, y'all. Xavier like texted me like 30, 45 minutes before we got started here. And he's like, I want to talk about these 2 games. And I'm like, all right, and you want to record it soon? He's like, yep. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to hit up these games real quick. So I watched like a 3-minute recap of these games. I don't know a ton here. I'll be real with y'all. But the thing that really stuck out to me was Louisville just kept settling for field goals in this game. They kicked for field goals 6 times during this game. They tried to kick a game-winning field goal, missed that one. That was unfortunate. But again, at the end of the day, I think like pair that with Malik Cunningham's kind of like off day. I think that's what did Louisville in here. Again, I'd love to go back and watch this game more in full later on, especially again. I like to see what went wrong with Malik. I'd like to see what was going on with Brennan Armstrong in this game. But those are my kind of thoughts on this game. So let's move on to our final game of the weekend, and that is going to be Florida State beating UNC in my opinion, one of the most what the hell series of games the last couple of years. UNC, there is no reason why Florida State should have had your number these last 2 years. They have looked awful. You were up 10-0 on this game so early on. What happened? What are your thoughts here, Xavier?
Yeah, the fact that honestly, you said that who were the two best quarterbacks? KJ Jefferson and this past week it was KJ and who else?
Frank Harris.
I'm surprised that Jordan Travis had.
He was up there.
I was like, he had to be close because they made this man look like a god. I just didn't like. We knew UNC's defense was suspect, but we didn't know how suspect this defense was really going to look. Like Deshaun Corbin was a non-factor. Like their running back, well, not even their running back room. I mean, if you want to count Jordan Travis as a running back, they all split evenly, where it was like 14, 13, 12, which, not perfectly, but you're only separating by one carry. And Jordan Travis just looked like a running back, where he ran for had 14 carries for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he threw for 3 touchdowns as well too. So I just don't know what to say, and it's just more of like what Sam Howell. I love the dual threat ability that he's showing, but I'm like, come on now, you have like I think at this point we have to point at North Carolina receivers besides Josh Downs.
I was saying, like, do not put the blame on Josh Downs.
I think with what they lost with Daz Newsome and Diami, it was probably just too much to where you're asking a lot of the guys that like either that were there that weren't good enough, or a lot of these young up and coming guys that are just not ready for this moment yet. And only Josh Downs is there, and that's probably Sam Howell only has to rely on him and his legs. So it's kind of sad at this point. I don't know what North Carolina's going to look like for the future. Like Sam Howell's probably most likely gone after this year. So
there's beginning to be rumors that he might stick around for one more year. We will see. I don't think he should. Yeah, I think he's shown more than enough ability that like whatever's going on at UNC right now is not his fault.
Yeah, I'm like, it's the O-line, the defense at this point.
And if Daniel Jones can be drafted based on what he did at Duke, I think Sam Howell will be fine.
Absolutely, because honestly, if you look at like the quarterbacks for this year, it's between Sam Howell and Malik Willis for who wants to go for, like, not number 1 overall, but the 4th quarterback taken.
Matt Corral I'll throw out there as well.
Matt Corral too. Matt Corral as well. So yeah, I think between those 3. But yeah, it's just not looking well for that UNC team and Mac Brown, who we had high expectations for going on into the season.
UNC and Miami play next week, and Xavier and I's disappointment bowl. So we're gonna find out who's the bigger disappointment, Miami or UNC. I'm still pulling for UNC because I had them winning the Coastal Division this year. Xavier had Miami. Neither one are probably gonna win that division now, but
not even close.
We'll find out. We'll settle that completely. All right, y'all. That's our show right there. Appreciate y'all tuning in for this. Once again, we went too long, but you know what? I don't care. I had a blast after not being able to join for 2 of the shows last week. It has been so good to talk to you guys again. I really just didn't realize how much I miss actually being on the show. So hopefully you guys welcome me back with welcome arms and are not dreading hearing the sound of my voice again. Regardless, thank you guys for listening. Please make sure you are following us on all of our platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that notification bell. Make sure, in addition to that, tell your friends about us, y'all. And just tell your friends about college fantasy in general. Next year, I want college fantasy to just grow as much as possible. Hopefully, we'll be seeing so many... We will be seeing more platforms opening up to the format. So I am really hoping that we can just get the entire industry to grow. And with that, please bring your friends to us. Let them know that we are the best source to go to for a consistent show for college fantasy football. In addition, make sure you're following us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As always, I love those 5-star reviews you guys leave us. Love reading those. And if you ever do leave one, just DM me on Twitter or at me on Twitter. Say, hey, I left one. I will let everybody know in the world that you did that. Speaking of Twitter, I am at CFF_Jared, and he is at CFF_Xavier. You can find us there. Love talking to you guys on there. Ask us any question. As I always say, there's no dumb questions. There are only dumb answers. And since we're the ones giving answers, we're the only ones that can sound dumb. So, y'all, thank you so much. Xavier, is there anything else you want to say before we head out of here?
Yeah, just to express your sentiments, echo your sentiments as well too. I mean, you might see, a banner on College Game Day one of these this upcoming weekend again. Keep the lookout for that, for just promotional things, not for our podcast, but just for the industry in general. We're not that too altruistic in our podcast. We want everybody to succeed in this industry, and we just want more just a fan base for this as well. Like, we enjoy this. We have fun doing this, researching these players. Looking at these teams, because in our hearts we truly believe that college football is the best football. We don't have to worry about we don't have to worry about too much about the NFL. We can look at what these players are going to do, and we can sit back and look like, hey, he was really good in college, and look at we get good laughs as well too. Especially around draft season, where we look at Mel Tucker and they tell us that why this person was bad.
Mel Kiper, you mean?
Mel Kiper. So we're just like, yeah. It's really a fun time. I think everybody should enjoy it and listen, hear us out for this. But yeah, like you said, we enjoy all the support, and we can't wait to continue this on and continue to give you all the information that we can.
Yeah, we got so many great things coming up. We're appearing on 2 different shows. Once I get the full information for you guys, I will let you guys know about that. We'll be guest appearing on those. We got, again, tons of fun stuff coming up, and we appreciate you guys being here for the ride. So with all that being said, thank you guys for listening, and y'all have a blessed day.